When fashion CEO Damian Reese proposes to copywriter Amani Reed, it's a whirlwind of romance, until she uncovers a secret clause linking their marriage to a fortune. Was it love or a calculated move? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Glamour Styles headquarters, reflecting off the glass and steel that made up the city's most impressive skyline. Amani Reed hurried through the revolving doors, her simple black dress and blazer, a stark contrast to the flashy outfits worn by most of the women in the building. "Morning, Amani," called the security guard with a genuine smile. Unlike the executives who barely gave him a glance, Amani always stopped to ask about his daughter's soccer games. "Morning, Joe. How'd Sophia do at the championship?" Joe beamed. "3 goals, can you believe it, my little girl?" Amani's smile was warm and real. "That's amazing. Tell her I said congratulations." This was Amani's way, noticing the people others overlooked, caring about the stories that weren't splashed across social media. At 27, she'd learned that real connections weren't about status or attention. They were built in these small, honest moments. In the elevator, she checked her phone and saw the meeting notification, the quarterly campaign review, with the CEO great. Damian Reese had taken over his father's company 2 years ago and turned it from a respected fashion house into a global empire. His face was on magazines, his dating life fueled gossip sites, and his arrogant smirk made Amani roll her eyes every time she saw it online. Not that she sought out news about him, but when your boss is one of People magazine's most eligible bachelors, it's hard to avoid hearing about his latest yacht party or model girlfriend. The elevator doors opened to the 30th floor, and Amani made her way to her desk. Her space was organized and simple, a small potted plant, a framed photo of her mother, and a stack of notebooks. No trinkets, no clutter. "He's here already," her colleague Zoe whispered, appearing beside her desk. Zoe was everything Amani wasn't: loud, dramatic, and desperately trying to get noticed by upper management. Damian Reese in the flesh, wearing that blue suit that makes his eyes look like the ocean. Amani tried not to smile at Zoe's breathless description. "I'm sure his eyes are lovely, but I'm more concerned about him approving the Harmony skincare campaign. I've been working on that copy for weeks." "God, Amani, you're the only woman in this building who wouldn't sell a kidney for 5 minutes alone with that man." "I like my kidneys where they are, thanks." Amani gathered her notes and laptop. "Is everyone in the conference room already?" The glass-walled conference room was buzzing with energy when Amani entered. 6 department heads and their assistants were arranged around the massive table, all of them sneaking glances at the man standing by the window. Even Amani had to admit there was something about Damian Reese that commanded attention. Tall, with dark hair that seemed deliberately tousled, and yes, those eyes were startlingly blue against his tan skin. He was on his phone, nodding at whatever the caller was saying, his voice a low murmur. Amani took a seat near the back, opened her laptop, and began reviewing her notes. No fussing with her hair, no nervous smoothing of her dress. She was here to do a job. Let's get started. Damian's voice cut through the chatter as he took his place at the head of the table. "I've got a flight to Milan in 3 hours, so I need everyone to be concise." The marketing director, Richard Palmer, immediately launched into a presentation about market trends and consumer demographics. Amani noticed how the women in the room leaned forward when Damian spoke, how they laughed a little too loudly at his mild jokes. It was exactly the kind of behavior her mother had warned her about. "Never let a man see how much you want him to notice you," Catherine Reed had told her daughter. "That's when they know they can break your heart." Her mother had learned that lesson the hard way. Amani's father had been charming, handsome, and completely unreliable. He disappeared when Amani was 8, leaving Catherine to raise their daughter alone. The quick trip to the store had turned into 19 years of silence. Catherine had never stopped loving him, though. Even as cancer took her strength, she'd kept hoping he might return. Amani had watched her mother waste away, waiting for a man who never deserved her in the first place. "Ms. Reed, your campaign," Amani snapped back to the present. Damian Reese was looking directly at her, one eyebrow raised. The room had gone quiet. "Yes," Of course. She stood, connecting her laptop to the projector. Unlike the nervous energy of previous presenters, Amani's movements were calm and precise. The Harmony skincare line targets women over 40 who value authenticity over artificial. Beauty standards, she began. No flashy introduction, no attempt to impress, just the facts delivered with quiet confidence. As she spoke, she felt Damien's eyes on her. Not the casual glance he'd given the others, but a focused gaze. She ignored it and continued her presentation. The tagline I've developed is, "Real beauty doesn't hide." It speaks to the brand's commitment to enhancing natural beauty rather than masking it. She showed slides of the campaign, elegant, simple, effective. When she finished, she didn't look at Damien for approval. She simply sat down and waited for questions. "That's refreshing," Damien said after a moment. "No gimmicks, no false promises, just honest communication about a quality product." He leaned forward. "Who came up with the concept?" "Ms. Reed." "Dead," Richard jumped in. "She's been with us for 3 years, one of our most talented copywriters." Now Damien was really staring at her, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Amani met his gaze politely, but without the adoring expression he was probably used to seeing. "Well done, Ms. Reed. I'd like to see more of this approach across all our campaigns." "Thank you, Mr. Rees." She nodded and returned to her notes. The meeting continued, but Amani could feel something had shifted. Damien kept glancing her way, even when others were speaking. It wasn't the look of a boss evaluating an employee. It was something else entirely. When the meeting ended, everyone gathered their things and began filing out. Amani was packing up her laptop when Damien approached. "Ms. Reed, do you have a moment?" Up close, he was even more intimidating, over 6 feet tall with shoulders that filled out his custom suit perfectly. But Amani didn't shrink back or flutter her eyelashes like Zoe would have. "Of course, Mr. Rees. I'm curious about your background. You don't seem to follow the usual playbook around here. Was that a compliment or criticism?" Amani couldn't tell. "I believe in letting the work speak for itself," she said simply. He studied her face. "Most people try very hard to impress me. I'm trying to impress the consumers who will buy our products," Amani replied. "They're the ones who matter." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, followed by something that looked almost like delight. "That's an unusual perspective in this building." He tilted his head. "Have dinner with me tonight. I'd like to hear more about your ideas." And there it was. The inevitable moment when men like Damien Rees revealed what they really wanted. Amani had seen it before. The powerful man mentoring the younger employee, only to expect something. In return, "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Rees, but I have plans this evening." Her tone was professional, not cold but not inviting either. "Tomorrow then." "I'm afraid I'm quite busy this week." She closed her laptop case. "But I'm happy to schedule a meeting through your assistant if you'd like to discuss the campaign further." Damien blinked, clearly not used to rejection. "A meeting?" "Yes, sir." Amani gave him a polite smile. "If there's nothing else, I should get back to work." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and amusement. "By all means, Ms. Reed, don't let me keep you." Amani nodded and walked past him, aware of his eyes following her out of the room. She didn't look back. "He asked you to dinner and you said no." Zoe was practically hyperventilating in the break room later that day. "Are you insane? Do you know how many women would kill for that chance?" Amani calmly stirred her tea. "It wasn't appropriate. He's the CEO. He's Damien freaking Rees. He dated that Victoria's Secret model last year, and that Italian actress, and now he's asking you to dinner?" "Exactly my point," Amani said. "Men like that don't seriously date women like me. They get bored, they move on, and then you're left, trying to do your job with a broken heart and office gossip following you everywhere." Zoe rolled her eyes. "Not everything is a tragic love story, Amani. Sometimes gorgeous, rich men just want to have dinner with smart women. And I just want to do my job without complications." Amani checked her watch. "I need to finish the Ocean Breeze copy before 5. As she walked back to her desk, Amani couldn't help thinking about Damien's face when she'd turned him down. He hadn't seemed angry, more intrigued, like she was a new species he'd discovered. Well, he'd forget about her by tomorrow. Men like Damien Reese always had a new distraction waiting. But he didn't forget. The next morning, Amani found a coffee. On her desk, not from the cart in the lobby but from Café Laurent, the expensive French place 3 blocks away. A simple note was propped against it. Their tea selection is better. Next time? DR. Zoe nearly fainted when she saw it. He remembered you don't drink coffee. That's it, he's in love with you. He's bored, Amani corrected her, and I'm a novelty. But even as she said it, she felt a strange flutter in her chest. She pushed the feeling away and got to work. That afternoon, Damien appeared at her desk, not with a grand gesture, but casually, as if he happened to be passing by. Ms. Reed, I need someone to review the copy for the Milan fashion show. Richard suggested you. Several nearby co-workers stopped typing, openly staring now. Of course. Amani kept her voice even. When do you need it? Now, if possible? In my office? Amani gathered a notebook and pen, ignoring Zoe's exaggerated wink, from across the room. She followed Damien to the executive elevator, aware of the whispers trailing behind them. His office took up half the top floor, all glass and modern art, with a view that stretched across the city. Amani had never been up here before. Please sit. He gestured to a sleek sofa, rather than the chairs facing his desk. This felt less like a work meeting by the second, but Amani kept her expression neutral as she sat down. Damien didn't immediately join her. Instead, he went to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of water. I realized I don't know how you take your tea, he said, handing her a glass, but everyone drinks water. Thank you. She accepted it, surprised by the thoughtful gesture. About the Milan copy? Yes, of course. He sat down, not too close, but close enough that she caught the scent of his cologne, something subtle and expensive. But first, I wanted to apologize if my dinner invitation made you uncomfortable. That she hadn't expected. Powerful men didn't usually acknowledge when they'd overstepped. It's fine, Mr. Reese. Damien, please. He smiled. Not the practiced smile from magazine covers, but something a little more hesitant. And it's not fine if it made you uncomfortable. I should have been more professional. Amani wasn't sure how to respond. This wasn't following the script she expected. The truth is, he continued, your presentation yesterday was the most genuine thing I've heard in this building in months. No flattery, no attempts to impress me or read what I wanted to hear. Just honest work. He leaned back. It's rare in my world. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability that seemed out of place on Damien Reese's perfect face. I'm just doing my job, Amani said, and I'm making it awkward. He laughed softly. Let's start over. I have the Milan copy here, and I genuinely would value your input. He handed her a folder, and for the next hour they worked side by side, discussing language and messaging. Damien listened to her suggestions, asked thoughtful questions, and never once made her feel like this was a pretext for something else. By the time they finished, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the office. This was helpful, Damien said as Amani gathered her things. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Amani. The sound of her name in his voice did something strange to her heartbeat. You're welcome. Damien. The familiarity felt foreign on her tongue. As she turned to leave, he spoke again. Would it be completely inappropriate if I asked about that tea now? Not dinner, just tea, in the middle of the day in a public place. Amani hesitated. Every instinct told her to keep her distance, to protect herself from becoming another conquest story. But there had been something different about him today, something real beneath the polished surface. I think that would be acceptable, she said finally. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise, genuine and warm, and nothing like the smirk she'd seen in magazines. Tomorrow? 1 o'clock? I'll meet you in the lobby. Amani nodded, suddenly unable to trust her voice. As she walked to the elevator, she could feel his eyes on her again. But this time, just before the doors closed, she allowed herself one glance back. Damien was still watching her, that same sunrise smile on his face. And for the first time, Amani felt the wall around her heart shift ever so slightly. Back at her desk, she found a small envelope tucked beneath her laptop. Inside was a handwritten note. "Every woman wants something from me. You're the only one who never asked, so now I'm asking, what would it take for you to look at me the way I've been looking at you?" Amani's fingers trembled as she folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. Maybe some walls were meant to come down after all. Amani couldn't sleep that night. The note from Damien lay on her nightstand, and her eyes kept drifting to it in the darkness. What was she doing? Getting involved with the CEO was exactly the kind of mistake she'd promised herself she'd never make. Her small apartment was quiet except for the distant sounds of traffic. On the wall hung her mother's favorite painting, a simple landscape of rolling hills that had once hung in their living room. It was one of the few things Amani had kept after Catherine died. "What would you tell me to do, Mom?" she whispered. Catherine. Reed had been a practical woman, but she'd also believed in taking chances, at least before Amani's father had broken her heart. The next morning, Amani dressed with slightly more care than usual. Nothing flashy, just a dark green dress that brought out the warmth in her brown skin and made her eyes look more amber than brown. "Look at you," Zoe exclaimed when Amani arrived at work. "Hot date?" "Just tea," Amani said, though her stomach fluttered at the thought. "With the CEO?" Zoe wiggled her eyebrows. "Half the women in this building are plotting your death right now." "It's a professional meeting," Amani insisted, but Zoe just laughed. "Sure, honey. That's why he's been staring at the elevator every time it opens for the past hour." Amani glanced toward the executive hallway. Sure enough, Damien was standing by his assistant's desk, pretending to review something on her computer. As if sensing Amani's gaze, he looked up and their eyes met across the office floor. He smiled, that same genuine smile from yesterday, and Amani felt her cheeks warm as she turned back to her computer. When 1 o'clock rolled around, she took the elevator down to the lobby with as much composure as she could manage. Damien was already waiting, looking more casual than she'd ever seen him, in dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "You came," he said, as if he'd been worried she might change her mind. "I said I would." Amani adjusted the strap of her purse. "Where are we going?" "There's a tea shop 2 blocks from here. They import leaves from all over the world." He held the door open for her. "Unless you have another place you prefer." Outside, the spring air was mild, flowers blooming in planters along the sidewalk. They walked side by side, an awkward distance between them. Not quite friends, definitely not colleagues anymore. "I found your note," Amani said finally. Damien ran a hand through his hair, looking almost nervous. "Too forward?" "Honest," she replied, "but I'm not sure what you expect from me." They stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Damien turned to face her. "I don't expect anything, Amani. That's what makes you different." His blue eyes were serious. "Every relationship in my life comes with expectations. Business partners want profit. Board members want growth. Women want..." He trailed off. "Status? Money? Your connections?" Amani supplied. "Yes, and I've always been fine with that arrangement." The light changed, and they began walking again. "Until I saw you in that meeting, you looked right at me and saw just a person. Not Damien Reese, CEO, just a man you had to present to." The tea shop was small and elegant, with shelves of colorful tins lining the walls. The hostess clearly recognized Damien, her eyes widening as she led them to a private table in the back. "The jasmine pearl tea is excellent," Damien said once they were seated, "but they have over 50 varieties." Amani studied the menu. "I'll try the Darjeeling." After they ordered, a strange silence fell between them. Amani found herself noticing details she hadn't before. The slight crease between his eyebrows when he concentrated, the way one corner of his mouth lifted slightly higher than the other when he smiled. "Tell me about your family," Damien said. Suddenly, the question caught her off guard. Most men talked about themselves on dates, not that this was a date. "It's just me now," she said. "My mother died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry." His sympathy seemed genuine. "You were close?" Amani nodded. "She raised me alone. My father left when I was 8. Went to the store for milk and never came back. She gave a small, humorless laugh. Classic story. Damien's expression darkened. Not classic, unforgivable. The intensity in his voice surprised her. Their tea arrived, providing a welcome distraction, as the server arranged delicate cups and pots on the table. "What about your family?" Amani asked once they were alone again. Damien added a small amount of honey to his tea. "My father built the company. He was demanding. Excellence was the minimum expectation." He took a sip from his cup. "My mother lives in France now. They divorced when I was 12. That must have been difficult," he shrugged. "It taught me that relationships have expiration dates. People leave when they get what they want or when something better comes along." "Not all people," Amani said softly. Their eyes met over the table, and for a moment neither spoke. "Is that why you turned down my dinner invitation?" Damien asked. "You thought I'd get what I wanted and disappear?" Amani considered lying, then decided against it. "Yes, men like you—" "Don't say men like you as if you know me," he interrupted, his voice gentle despite the words. "You've read about me in gossip columns. That's not knowing someone." He was right, and Amani felt a twinge of shame. Wasn't she doing exactly what she hated, judging someone based on appearances? "You're right. I'm sorry." She took a sip of her tea, gathering her thoughts. "But you have to admit, your reputation doesn't suggest you're looking for anything serious. And what if I am? With the right person?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Before Amani could respond, Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "I'm sorry, I need to take this. It's Milan." He stood, stepping away from the table to answer. Amani watched him through the window as he paced outside, his expression growing more serious by the second. When he returned, his entire demeanor had changed. "I have to go," he said, placing money on the table. "There's a problem with the venue for the fashion show. I need to fly out tonight." Disappointment washed over Amani, sharper than she expected. "Of course. You have a company to run." Damien hesitated, then reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm, confident. "I want to continue this conversation, Amani. When I get back." "When will that be?" "A week, maybe 2. He squeezed her hand gently. "Will you wait?" The question carried more weight than its simple words suggested. Amani knew what he was really asking. Would she give him a chance despite her reservations? Despite his reputation and position? "I'll be here," she said finally. "I have deadlines anyway." His smile returned, brightening his entire face. "I'll call you." He stood to leave, then paused. "And Amani, thank you for the tea." After he left, Amani remained at the table, thoughts swirling. What was she doing? Opening herself up to exactly the kind of pain her mother had warned her about, and yet there had been something in Damien's eyes. Something real beneath the polished exterior. 2 weeks turned into 3 with only occasional text messages from Damien. The Milan crisis had expanded to include Paris and London. Celebrity clients were making demands. Investors were concerned. Every rational part of Amani told her this was proof. Men like Damien didn't have room in their lives for real relationships. She threw herself into her work, staying late at the office, taking on extra projects. "You're avoiding thinking about him," Zoe accused one evening as they worked late. "I'm doing my job," Amani countered. "You check your phone every 10 minutes. Amani couldn't deny it. Despite her best efforts, she'd started looking forward to Damien's messages. Small glimpses into his world. A photo of sunrise over Milan with the caption, "Wish you could see this." A quick update about negotiations. A simple, "Thinking of you." That had made her heart race. "It doesn't matter," Amani said, putting her phone face down. "He lives in a different world." "Maybe he wants you in his world," Zoe suggested. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. On Friday afternoon, nearly a month after their tea date, Amani was preparing to leave when a delivery arrived. A small package wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside was a tin of Darjeeling tea with a note, "I'll be back tomorrow, have dinner with me." Amani's hands trembled slightly as she texted a response. "Yes." His reply came immediately. "I'll pick you up at 7, send me your address." That night, Amani stood in front of her closet, suddenly hating everything she owned. Her practical wardrobe seemed woefully inadequate for dinner with a man who dated supermodels. She finally chose a simple black dress, the one her mother had insisted she buy for special occasions. Catherine had always believed in being prepared for unexpected happiness. At precisely 7 u, her doorbell rang. Amani took a deep breath, smoothed her dress and opened the door. Damien stood there looking more handsome than she remembered in a charcoal suit with no tie. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd just showered, and he held a small bouquet of wildflowers. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes taking her in. "Thank you," Amani replied, suddenly shy. "Come in for a moment while I get my purse." Damien stepped inside, glancing around her small apartment with interest. She'd cleaned frantically that afternoon, but her home was still modest. Bookshelves lining one wall, simple furniture, her mother's painting. "This is nice," he said, and to her surprise, he seemed to mean it. "It feels like you." "It's not exactly a penthouse," Amani said, grabbing her purse. "I've lived in penthouses my whole life," Damien replied. "They're usually cold and impersonal." He nodded toward her bookshelves. "You read a lot." "Books were my escape growing up. Mom and I didn't have much, but we always had library cards." Damien touched the spine of one book gently. "My father considered fiction a waste of time." There was something in his voice, a hint of old pain that made Amani want to know more. But he was already moving toward the door. "Ready?" "I made reservations at Lupo's." Lupo's was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Impossible to get into without connections and a month-long waiting list. "How did you get a reservation on such short notice?" Amani asked as they walked to his car, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Damien gave her a small smile as he opened the passenger door. "I may have called in a favor. The owner's son interned at Reese last summer." The restaurant was everything Amani expected, elegant, understated, with soft lighting and discreet service. They were led to a private table in a corner alcove, away from curious eyes. "I thought you might prefer privacy," Damien explained. "People tend to take photos when I'm out." Of course, dating Damien Reese would mean living in a fishbowl. Another reason to guard her heart. But as the evening progressed, Amani found it harder to remember all the reasons she should keep her distance. Damien was attentive, asking questions about her childhood, her dreams, her opinions on everything, from books to politics. He listened when she spoke, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk. "You're different than I expected," she admitted over dessert. "Different good or different bad?" "Good," she said. "More real." Damien's expression softened. "I've had a lifetime of being Damien Reese, heir to the empire. It's exhausting sometimes." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "With you, I can just be Damien." The touch of his hand sent electricity through her veins. Amani realized with startling clarity that she was falling for him, despite her reservations, despite everything she'd promised herself. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. "You could have anyone." "That's exactly why." He took her hand fully now, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Everyone wants Damien Reese. No one wants just Damien. And you think I do?" "I think you see me," he said simply. "The real me. And I see you too, Amani. Not just the brilliant copywriter or the beautiful woman, but the person underneath who loves books and takes care of everyone except herself." Amani felt exposed, as if he'd somehow read her soul. But instead of feeling vulnerable, she felt seen, truly seen perhaps for the first time. After dinner, Damien drove her home, the city lights creating a kaleidoscope of colors through the car windows. At her door, they stood facing each other, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. "I'd like to see you again," Damien said, his voice low. "Tomorrow?" Amani knew she was at a crossroads. She could protect herself, keep her distance, avoid the potential heartbreak, or she could take a chance. "I'd like that," she said softly. Damien smiled, that sunrise smile that made her heart flip, and leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Amani didn't move. His lips met hers in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened, his hand coming up to cradle her face. When they finally broke apart, Both were breathless. "Good night, Amani," he whispered, his forehead resting against hers. "Good night, Damien." She watched him walk back to his car, feeling as if her world had shifted on its axis. As she entered her apartment, her phone pinged with a text message. "I've been looking for you my whole life without even knowing it. Thank you for finally seeing me." Amani pressed the phone to her heart, a smile spreading across her face. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Damien took her to art galleries, hidden restaurants in the city, and quiet walks in the park. At work, they maintained a professional distance, but everyone noticed the change in both of them. "He actually smiles in meetings now," Zoe whispered one day. "The board members don't know what to make of it." Amani couldn't deny her own transformation. She found herself laughing more, taking more risks with her creative work, opening up in ways she hadn't since her mother died. But doubts still crept in late at night. Their worlds were so different. Damien's life was filled with galas and business trips, while Amani preferred quiet evenings at home. And despite his attentiveness, she still wondered if this was just a novelty for him, the thrill of pursuing someone who hadn't immediately fallen at his feet. One evening, as they sat on her small balcony sharing a bottle of wine, Amani decided to voice her concerns. "Where is this going, Damien?" He set down his glass, his expression serious. "Where do you want it to go?" "That's not an answer." "I'm falling in love with you, Amani." The directness of his statement took her breath away. "Is that answer enough?" Words failed her. Damien reached for her hand. "I know it's fast, I know you have doubts, but I've never felt this way about anyone." His eyes held hers, intense and vulnerable. "You make me want to be better, not just as a businessman, but as a person." Amani felt tears gather in her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Your life is so different from mine. The women you've dated before were never you," he interrupted. "Those relationships were transactions. They wanted my name, my connections. I wanted beautiful arm candy for events." He moved closer, cupping her face. "This is real, Amani. You and me. The question is, are you brave enough to trust it?" Before she could answer, his phone rang. The special ringtone he used for emergency business calls. Damien sighed, checking the screen. "I have to take this. It's the Tokyo office." While he took the call inside, Amani remained on the balcony, thoughts churning. Was she brave enough? Could she trust not just Damien but herself to handle whatever came with loving a man like him? Damien returned, looking troubled. "I'm sorry, but I need to go. There's a situation that requires my immediate attention." "Of course." Amani nodded, used to these interruptions by now. "Is everything okay?" "Just business." He kissed her quickly. "We'll continue this conversation tomorrow, I promise." But something in his expression worried her. He seemed suddenly distant, his mind already miles away. The next day, Damien didn't come to the office, nor did he call or text. Amani tried to focus on her work, telling herself he was just busy with the Tokyo crisis. "Have you seen this?" Zoe appeared at her desk, holding out her phone. On the screen was a gossip site with the headline, "Rice back with former flame, CEO spotted with Model X at Tokyo Hotel." The photo showed Damien entering a hotel with a stunning blonde woman, his hand on the small of her back. Amani felt the floor tilt beneath her. She'd been a fool after all. Her mother had been right. Men like Damien didn't change. They just got bored and moved on. "I'm sure there's an explanation," Zoe said uncertainly. But Amani could barely hear her over the roaring in her ears. Everything she'd feared was coming true. She'd let down her guard, opened her heart, and now her phone buzzed with a text from Damien. "Need to talk. Can I come over tonight?" Of course he wanted to talk, to let her down gently, to explain that it had been fun, but he needed to move on, that his ex understood his lifestyle in ways Amani never could. With trembling fingers, she typed her reply. "Don't bother. I've seen the photos. I understand perfectly." Then she turned off her phone, gathered her things, and walked out of the office, head held high despite the tears threatening to fall. She would not let Damien Reese see her cry. She would not become her mother, waiting for a man who would never truly be hers. This time, Amani was the one who wouldn't look back. Amani spent the weekend in her apartment, blinds drawn, ignoring the constant buzzing of her phone. She alternated between anger and heartbreak, replaying every moment with Damien, searching for signs she'd missed. Had it all been a game to him? The pursuit of the one woman who hadn't immediately fallen at his feet? By Monday morning, she'd steeled herself. She would not fall apart. She would go to work, hold her head high and pretend Damien Reese had never touched her heart. But when she arrived at the office, there was a commotion near the reception desk. A massive arrangement of wildflowers, like the small bouquet Damien had brought to her apartment, but multiplied 100-fold, dominated the entire area. "They're for you," Zoe said, appearing at her side with wide eyes. "There must be $500 worth of flowers here." Amani's heart thumped painfully. "Take them away. Donate them to a hospital or something." "But there's a card. I don't want to see it." Amani walked past the flowers toward her desk, aware of curious eyes watching her. "And if Mr. Reese calls or comes by, I'm in a meeting. All day." Zoe followed her, lowering her voice. "Don't you at least want to hear his explanation? That woman in the photo is Sophia Laurent. They dated 2 years ago before he took over the company." "I don't care if they dated 2 centuries ago," Amani said, turning on her computer. "He was with her in Tokyo while telling me he was falling in love with me. That's all I need to know." Throughout the morning, Damien called her desk phone 4 times. Amani let it go to voicemail. He sent emails marked urgent personal, which she deleted unread. At noon, a delivery arrived with lunch from her favorite sandwich shop and another note, which she also refused. "You're being stubborn," Zoe said as they worked on the seasonal campaign in the afternoon. "At least listen to what he has to say." "I've heard enough," Amani replied, though a tiny part of her wondered. What if there was an explanation? What? If she was throwing away something real because of her fear? No. The photo didn't lie. Damien had been with his ex in Tokyo, his hand intimately placed on her back as they entered a hotel. Some things didn't need explaining. At 5 o'clock, as Amani was packing up to leave, Richard Palmer appeared at her desk. "Ms. Reed, I need you to bring the Hunter Sportswear copy to the executive conference room." "Can't it wait until tomorrow? I'm on my way out." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "It's urgent. Mr. Reese specifically requested you." So this was Damien's new tactic, using her job to force a meeting. Anger flared in Amani's chest. Fine. But it will be a strictly professional conversation. She gathered the Hunter file and followed Richard to the elevator. The executive floor was quiet, most of the staff already gone for the day. Richard led her to the conference room, opened the door for her, then quickly disappeared. Damien stood by the window, looking out. At the city. He turned when she entered, and Amani was struck by how tired he looked. Dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect hair disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I didn't, so have much choice." Amani placed the file on the table, keeping her voice businesslike. "Here's the Hunter copy you requested. Is there anything else, Mr. Reese?" "Amani, please, I have plans this evening, so if there's nothing else..." It wasn't what it looked like. Damien stepped toward her, desperation in his eyes. "Sophia is engaged to the head of our Tokyo office. I was escorting her into the hotel for a business dinner. Her fiancé met us inside." Amani faltered. That wasn't what she'd expected him to say. "Why should I believe you?" Damien pulled out his phone and pulled up a photo. It showed Damien, Sophia, and an Asian man, all raising glasses around a restaurant table. The man had his arm around Sophia's shoulders. "Takashi Yamamoto. They're getting married in December." Damien set the phone down. "I would never hurt you like that, Amani. Never." Relief and embarrassment washed over her in equal measure. She'd jumped to conclusions, let her fears and insecurities dictate her response without giving him a chance to explain. The gossip sites publish whatever gets them clicks, Damien finished. They cropped Takashi out of the photo deliberately. He moved closer. "I tried to call you. I sent messages, flowers. I thought you were trying to let me down gently." Amani looked away, ashamed now. I thought I was just another conquest, and you'd gotten bored. Bored? Damien's voice was incredulous. Amani, I've never felt this way about anyone before. When you wouldn't answer my calls, I thought I'd lost you. The raw emotion in his voice broke through Amani's last defenses. She looked up, meeting his gaze. I was scared, she admitted. Relationships in my life, they don't last. People leave. I'm not going anywhere. Damien reached for her hands, and this time she let him take them. But this misunderstanding makes me realize something. We need to be clear about what we want. He led her to the chairs, sitting down across from her, but still holding her hands. I want a future with you, Amani. Not just dating, not just fun. A real partnership. His eyes held hers, serious and sincere. But I need to know if you can trust me, if you can believe in us, even when the world gives you reasons to doubt. It was the question at the heart of everything. Could she trust him? More importantly, could she trust herself to take this risk? I want to, she whispered. But I've spent so long protecting myself, it's hard to stop. Then we'll take it one day at a time. He squeezed her hands gently. All I ask is that you talk to me before you walk away. Give me a chance to explain. Can you do that? Amani nodded, feeling the tight knot in her chest begin to loosen. I'm sorry I didn't listen. And I'm sorry I didn't call you from Tokyo the minute I heard about those photos. Damien stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. I should have known how it would look. Wrapped in his embrace, Amani felt the last of her anger dissolve. She had almost thrown away something precious because of fear and mistrust. Can we start over? She asked against his chest. Damien pulled back slightly, looking down at her with that sunrise smile. How about we just continue where we left off? He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I believe I was telling you that I'm falling in love with you. This time Amani didn't hesitate. I'm falling in love with you too. His kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a hunger that matched her own. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Have dinner with me tonight, Damien asked. My place this time. I want to cook for you. The idea of seeing Damien's home, his private space, sent a thrill through her. You cook? I have many hidden talents, he said with a smile. Some I'm still discovering myself. Damien's penthouse occupied the top floor of a sleek building overlooking the river. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city lights reflecting on the water. But what surprised Amani most was how warm it felt. She'd expected a showplace, cold and impersonal, designed to impress. Instead, she found comfortable furniture, bookshelves filled with well-read volumes, and photographs on the walls. This isn't what I imagined, she said as he took her coat. What did you imagine? Chrome and glass and no personality? Damien laughed. That was my father's aesthetic. I prefer to actually live in my home. The kitchen was spacious and modern, but clearly used. Ingredients were already laid out on the counter. Fresh vegetables, herbs, pasta. Red or white? Damien asked, opening a wine cabinet. Red, please. He poured 2 glasses, handed her one, then began chopping vegetables with surprising skill. Where did you learn to cook? Amani asked, leaning against the counter to watch him. My grandmother. She lived with us until I was 15. A fond smile crossed his face. She was the only one who saw me as more than the Reese heir. She'd sneak me down to the kitchen when my father was away on business trips. Amani sipped her wine, watching his confident movements. You miss her. Every day. Damien looked up from the cutting board. She would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who would see past the name. As he cooked, Damien told stories about his childhood, the pressure of being groomed to take over the company, his brief rebellion in college when he'd considered becoming a photographer. Instead, his complicated relationship with his father. When he died, everyone expected me to be devastated, Damien said, as he stirred the sauce. The truth is, I felt free. For the first time, I could run the company my way. Be the man I wanted to be, not the one he tried to shape. And who is that man? Amani asked softly. The one you want to be? Damien turned to face her, his expression serious. Someone worthy of a woman like you. Someone who builds things that last, not just a company, but a life, a family someday. The word family hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Dinner was delicious, pasta with a rich sauce that Damien confessed had been his grandmother's recipe. They ate at the small table in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room, and Amani found herself relaxing completely for the first time since they'd met. This was the real Damien, not the polished CEO or the society page fixture, but a man who cooked to remember his grandmother, who read the same books Amani loved, who looked at her across a kitchen table with such tenderness it made her heart ache. After dinner, they moved to the living room with fresh glasses of wine. Amani gravitated toward the bookshelves, examining his collection. "You have first editions," she said with surprise, carefully touching the spine of an old volume. "Another rebellion?" Damien said, coming to stand beside her. "My father thought collecting was a waste of money unless it was art that appreciated in value. I buy books because I love them." Amani turned to find him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. Without a word, he took her glass and set it aside, then drew her into his arms. His kiss was different this time, not gentle, not tentative, but certain and deep. Amani melted against him, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, then into his hair. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "Stay with me tonight," Damien whispered against her lips. "Not because I'm Damien Reese, or because I have this penthouse or run a company. Stay because I'm just a man who is completely in love with you." For answer, Amani kissed him again, putting everything she felt into the contact. All the fear and doubt fell away, leaving only this moment, this man, this feeling of coming home after a lifetime of searching. Later, as they lay tangled in his sheets, Amani's head resting on his chest, Damien traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I never expected this," she admitted. "You, us, any of it. Does it scare you still?" Amani considered the question. "Yes," she said honestly, "but not enough to make me run away." Damien tightened his arms around her. "Good, because I wouldn't let you get far." She lifted her head to look at him. "Damien Reese, are you saying you'd chase me? Across continents if necessary?" His blue eyes were serious despite his smile. "Now that I've found you, Amani Reed, I'm never letting you go." The next morning, Amani woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows and the smell of coffee. Damien was sitting on the edge of the bed, already dressed in suit pants and a white shirt, watching her with a smile. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "I have a meeting I can't reschedule, but there's breakfast in the kitchen. Stay as long as you like." Amani stretched, pulling the sheet up. "What time is it?" "Just after 7. I've left a key on the counter. Use it to lock up if you leave, or—" He hesitated. "Keep it. Come back any time. This place feels more like home with you in it." The casual offer of a key should have triggered all of Amani's warning signals. Instead, she felt only a warm glow of happiness. "That's a big step," she said. "The first of many, I hope." Damien kissed her properly this time, then stood. "I'll call you later." After he left, Amani wandered through the penthouse wearing one of Damien's shirts. In the kitchen, she found a full breakfast waiting. Fresh fruit, croissants, coffee, in a carafe. And beside the promised key, a single wildflower with a note. For all the mornings to come. She was falling hard and fast, and for once, she wasn't fighting it. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Damien and Amani settled into a relationship that surprised them both with its ease. At work, they maintained professional boundaries, but everyone knew they were together. "You've changed him," Richard told Amani one day after a meeting. "He listens more, considers different perspectives. The board is impressed." Amani had changed, too. She took more creative risks, spoke up more in meetings, stopped hiding her light. With Damien's encouragement, she applied for and received a promotion to creative director of the lifestyle division. "You earned it," Damien insisted when she worried people would think it was favoritism. "Your work speaks for itself." Their lives began to intertwine in ways both large and small. Damien cleared out half his closet for her things. Amani introduced him to her favorite hole-in-the-wall restaurants. They spent quiet weekends reading on his balcony or exploring hidden corners of the city. It wasn't perfect. They had arguments, misunderstandings, moments of doubt. Damien's work still took him away sometimes. Amani still had moments of insecurity when she saw photos of him with beautiful models at company events. But they talked through these challenges, learning each other's patterns, building something, stronger with each obstacle overcome. Then came the Milan Fashion Week, the biggest event in Reiss Fashion's calendar. This year was particularly important, as Damien was unveiling a new sustainable luxury line that had been his passion project. "I want you to come with me," he told Amani over dinner one night, "not just as my girlfriend, but as part of the creative team. Your work on the campaign has been brilliant." Amani hesitated. Going to Milan meant stepping fully into Damien's world. The cameras, the gossip sites, the public scrutiny. "There will be a lot of attention," she said. "Your ex-girlfriends will be there, people will talk." "Let them," Damien said with a shrug. "I'm proud to have you by my side, Amani, in every way." So she agreed, spending the next few weeks in a whirlwind of preparations. The marketing team created materials, the PR department arranged interviews, and Amani found herself at the center of the biggest campaign launch in the company's history. The night before they were due to leave for Milan, Damien took her to dinner, at the small tea shop where they'd had their first date. They sat at the same table, ordered the same tea, and reminisced about those early days. "Do you remember what you asked me that day?" Damien said as they finished their meal. "You asked, why you? Why out of all the women I could have, did I choose you?" Amani nodded, remembering her suspicion, her certainty that a man like Damien couldn't possibly want someone like her for genuine reasons. "I gave you some answer about how you saw the real me," Damien continued. "But I've had months to think about it now, and I realize the truth is much simpler." He reached across the table for her hand. "I chose you because you're the one I can't imagine living without, the one who makes everything better just by being there." There was something in his voice, a nervousness she rarely heard from confident Damien Reiss. Before she could respond, he stood up, coming around to her side of the table, and then, to her complete shock, he knelt down on one knee. The entire tea shop went silent. Amani's heart seemed to stop, then race ahead at double speed. "Amani Reed," Damien said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "You walked into that meeting room 8 months ago and didn't give me a second glance. You made me work for every smile, every moment of your time. You saw past the name and the money and the reputation to the man underneath." He pulled a small box from his pocket. "I promised myself I wouldn't rush this, that I'd give you time, but I've known since that first day that you're the one I want to spend my life with." He opened the box to reveal a ring. Not the massive diamond she might have expected, but a simple, elegant design with a deep blue sapphire surrounded by smaller diamonds. "The same color as your eyes," Amani whispered, tears gathering in her own. Damien nodded. "I had it made specially." He took a deep breath. "Amani Reed, will you marry me? Not because I'm Damien Reiss with all that comes with that name, but because I'm just a man who loves you more than I ever thought possible." Time seemed to stop as Amani looked into the eyes of the man kneeling before her. This was everything. She'd been afraid to want, everything she'd convinced herself she couldn't have, but the answer was simple as breathing. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, Damien, I'll marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The tea shop erupted in applause as he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a joy that matched her own. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I will spend every day making sure you never regret this moment." Back at the penthouse, their home now in all the ways that mattered, they celebrated with champagne on the balcony, the city lights spread out below them like stars. "Are you happy?" Damien asked, his arm around her shoulders as they looked out at the view. "Completely," Amani replied, leaning into him. "Though I'm a little worried about Milan now. This ring is going to cause a stir." Damien laughed. "Let it. I want the whole world to know you've chosen me." The next morning, as they prepared to leave for the airport, Damien received a call that took him into his office. Amani continued packing, her ring catching the light every time she moved her hand. She still couldn't quite believe it was real. When Damien emerged from his office, his expression had changed. He looked troubled, distracted. "What's wrong?" Hermione asked, immediately concerned. "Just a business issue, nothing for you to worry about." But he wouldn't meet her eyes, the first time, since they'd been together, that he'd shut her out this way. "Damien, talk to me. We're partners now, remember?" She touched his arm gently. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. Some information has come to light about one of our suppliers. Potential labor violations. I need to handle it before the show." "Of course, we'll deal with it together." Damien shook his head. "No, I need you to go ahead to Milan with the team. Make sure everything is ready for the launch. I'll follow tomorrow." Alarm bells rang in Amani's mind. Why was he suddenly pushing her away? "I can stay and help you here." "Amani, please." His tone was firmer now. "I need you in Milan. This is important." Something was wrong, very wrong. But she couldn't put her finger on what. The old fear stirred in her chest. Was this how it started? The slow withdrawal, the secrets, the separation? No. She trusted Damien. He loved her. They were engaged. Whatever this was, they would face it together. "Are you sure everything's okay?" she asked one more time as the car arrived to take her to the airport. Damien kissed her, but it felt distracted. "Everything's fine. I'll see you tomorrow." He helped load her luggage, then stood watching as the car pulled away. And for the first time since she'd known him, Amani felt like Damien Reese was hiding something from her. The flight to Milan was long and uncomfortable, her mind racing with possibilities. Was there more to this supplier issue? Was the company in trouble? Or was it something personal? Second thoughts about their engagement. When she landed, messages were waiting from the team, but nothing from Damien. She checked into the hotel, attended the pre-show meetings, and tried to focus on the work, but worry gnawed at her. That evening, as she returned to her hotel room exhausted, her phone rang with Damien's ringtone. "Hey," she answered, relief flooding her voice. "I've been worried. How are things there?" "Fine," Damien said, his voice oddly formal. "The situation is under control. I'll be on the first flight tomorrow." "That's good." Amani hesitated. "Damien, are you sure everything's okay? You sound strange." "I'm just tired." There was a pause. "Listen, Amani, about the engagement." Her heart froze. "What about it?" "We should keep it quiet for now. With this supplier issue, the timing isn't right for a public announcement." The distance in his voice hurt more than the words themselves. This wasn't her Damien, the man who'd knelt before her just days ago, who'd wanted the world to know she'd chosen him. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "What's really going on, Damien?" "Nothing. I just think—" He broke off as a voice sounded in the background, a woman's voice. "Who's there with you?" Amani asked, a chill running through her. "Just my assistant. We're working late." But there was a hesitation, a fraction of a second, too. "Long, Damien, tell me the truth. What's happening?" She was fighting tears now, the old fears rising up to choke her. "I have to go. We'll talk tomorrow when I arrive." And then, almost as an afterthought, "I love you, Amani." The call ended, leaving her staring at the phone in her hand. The sapphire ring suddenly felt heavy on her finger, the promise it represented. Now clouded with doubt, unable to sleep, Amani went down to the hotel bar for a cup of tea. The space was nearly empty, except for a middle-aged woman sitting alone in the corner. Something about her seemed familiar, though Amani was certain they'd never met. As she waited for her tea, the woman approached. "Excuse me," she said in lightly, accented English. "You're Amani Reed, aren't you, from Reese Fashion?" Amani nodded cautiously. "Yes, I am." The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I thought so. I've seen your photo with my son." Amani's cup nearly slipped from her hand. "Your son?" "Damien Reese," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Eleanor Reese, his mother." The world seemed to tilt beneath Amani's feet. Damien had told her his mother lived in France, that they weren't close. He'd never mentioned she would be in Milan. "He's never brought a girlfriend to Fashion Week before," Eleanor continued, her eyes falling to the ring on Amani's finger. "And certainly never given one that ring." "You recognize it?" Amani found her voice at last. "Of course, it was my mother's, a family heirloom." Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "He must care for you very much." Before Amani could process this information, Eleanor's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at Amani with a strange expression. "I'm sorry, but I need to go. It was nice meeting you, Ms. Reed. Perhaps we'll speak again soon." As Eleanor walked away, Amani noticed she'd left something on the bar, a business card. But when Amani turned it over, it wasn't Eleanor's information. It was a handwritten note. "Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m. Cafe Romano. There are things about my son you need to know before the wedding." Amani stared at the card, a sense of foreboding washing over her. What had Eleanor meant? What secrets was Damien keeping? And most troubling of all, why had his mother seemed so surprised to see Damien's grandmother's ring on Amani's finger? With a sinking heart, Amani realized that the fairy tale she'd allowed herself to believe in might be unraveling before her eyes. Tomorrow would bring answers, but she wasn't sure she was ready for them. As she rode the elevator back to her room, her phone buzzed with a text message from Damien. "Had to postpone my flight. Will explain everything when I see you. Trust me. Amani, please." But for the first time since she'd fallen in love with him, Amani wasn't sure she could. Amani barely slept that night. She kept staring at her engagement ring, remembering Eleanor's surprised expression. Why would Damien's mother be shocked to see a family heirloom on her finger? And what were these things she needed to know before the wedding? Morning came with a thick fog over Milan, matching Amani's clouded thoughts. She dressed carefully in a simple black dress and jacket, trying to prepare herself for whatever revelations awaited. Cafe Romano was a small establishment tucked away on a side street, far from the fashion district where most of the industry. People were gathering. Amani arrived early, choosing a table in the corner where she could watch the door. Eleanor Reese entered precisely at 10, dressed in an elegant cream suit that highlighted her still beautiful features. There was no denying where Damien had gotten his striking blue eyes. "Thank you for coming," Eleanor said, taking the seat across from Amani. "I wasn't sure you would." "Why wouldn't I?" Amani asked, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. Eleanor studied her for a moment. "Because you love my son. And sometimes we prefer not to know the truths that might hurt us." A server came to take their order. Espresso for Eleanor, tea for Amani. Neither spoke until the drinks arrived. "You're wearing my mother's ring," Eleanor finally said. "The one Damien's father gave me when we got engaged." She stirred her espresso. "The one I returned to him when I left." Amani touched the sapphire band. "Damien said he had it made for me." A flicker of sadness crossed Eleanor's face. "The first of many lies, I'm afraid." She set her spoon down. "Ms. Reed, how much do you know about my son's life before he took over the company?" "I know he worked in various divisions to learn the business, that he briefly considered becoming a photographer instead." Amani recalled the stories Damien had shared during quiet evenings together. That his relationship with his father was complicated. Complicated. Eleanor repeated the word with a bitter laugh. "That's one way to put it." She leaned forward. "What has Damien told you about me? About why I left?" "Not much," Amani admitted. "Just that you live in France now, and that you and he aren't close." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I expected as much. Damien has always been skilled at rewriting history to suit his needs." She took a sip of her espresso. "I don't live in France, Ms. Reed. I live in New York. In fact, I've lived there since the divorce, except for the 3 years I spent trying to rebuild my relationship with my son." Confusion washed over Amani. "But Damien said—" "My son says many things," Eleanor interrupted gently. "The truth is often more complicated." She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small photo album, sliding it across the table. "Before I tell you why I asked you here, I want you to see these." Amani opened the album with trembling fingers. The first photo showed a younger Damien, maybe 25, with his arm around a pretty brunette. They were laughing, heads close, together clearly in love. "Her name was Rebecca," Eleanor said softly. "They met in college. She was studying education, wanted to teach children with special needs. No family money, no connections. Just a kind heart and a genuine love for my son." Amani turned the page. More photos of Damien and Rebecca, at a beach, at what looked like a family dinner, building a snowman. "They were engaged," Eleanor continued. "Damien gave her that ring, the one you're wearing now." His father was furious. The Rees heir was expected to make a strategic marriage, not follow his heart. A cold feeling spread through Amani's chest. What happened to her? Damien chose the company, Eleanor said simply. His father made it clear, Rebecca or the Rees legacy. He couldn't have both. Amani's mind was racing, trying to reconcile the man she loved with this story. So he broke it off? In the cruelest way possible. Eleanor's voice hardened. He told her he'd never really loved her, that she'd been convenient while he was figuring out his life, that she wasn't Rees material. He broke her heart to please his father and secure his inheritance. Amani felt sick. This didn't sound like her Damien, the man who cooked for her, who listened to her dreams, who looked at her with such tenderness. I left Robert, Damien's father, shortly after, Eleanor continued. I couldn't stomach what he'd turned our son into. I tried to maintain a relationship with Damien, but he was already becoming his father's creation, cold, calculating, focused only on power and success. She turned to the last page of the album. It showed Eleanor with a woman who looked like an older version of the Rebecca in the earlier photos. Rebecca and I stayed in touch, Eleanor explained. She eventually healed, married a kind man, had children, but she never forgot how Damien had used and discarded her. Amani closed the album, pushing it back across the table. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Eleanor's eyes were sad, but determined. Because history is repeating itself, Ms. Reed. Last month I received a call from my son. For the first time in years, he wanted to talk. He told me he'd met someone unexpected, who was making him rethink everything. She nodded toward Tyre. Amani, you. So I was hopeful. I thought perhaps finally Damien was breaking free from his father's influence, even after Robert's death. Eleanor sighed. Until yesterday, when I received another call from Robert's old lawyer. Amani's stomach twisted. What did he want? To inform me that Damien had initiated proceedings to access the final portion of his inheritance, the portion that, according to Robert's will, would only be released when Damien married someone befitting the Rees name. The words hit Amani like physical blows. Damien had proposed to her to access his inheritance, their entire relationship, the slow pursuit, the apparent vulnerability, the declarations of love. Had it all been a calculated plan? There's more, Eleanor said gently. The lawyer mentioned that Damien had specified that the marriage would be short-term, a year, perhaps two, before an amicable divorce. Amani felt the room spin around her. She gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady herself. I don't believe you, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Damien loves me. He told me I'm the only one who sees the real him. Oh, my dear. Eleanor reached across the table, but stopped short of touching Amani's hand. That's what he told Rebecca too, word for word. Tears burned behind Amani's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Why would he do this? He already runs the company. He has money, power, everything he could want. The final portion of Robert's estate is substantial, nearly half the family fortune. Property, art collections, offshore accounts. Eleanor's expression was grim. But more than that, it's about control. My ex-husband's final way of ensuring Damien remained the man he'd shaped him to be, even from the grave. Amani thought of all the tender moments, all the seemingly honest conversations. Had it all been an act? The carefully calculated pursuit of a woman who hadn't immediately fallen at his feet, who presented just enough of a challenge to be interesting. What about the supplier issue? The reason he didn't come to Milan with me? There is no supplier issue, Eleanor said. Damien's been in meetings with the family lawyers, arranging the inheritance transfer to coincide with your wedding. The final piece clicked into place. The rush to propose, the insistence that they go public in Milan, the sudden request to keep the engagement quiet once the legal details were being arranged. It all made terrible sense. I should have listened to my instincts, Amani whispered, more to herself than to Eleanor. I knew men like him don't fall for women like me. Don't, Eleanor said sharply. Don't diminish yourself. You're exactly the kind of woman any man should fall for. Intelligent, genuine, principled. My son's failings are his own, not a reflection of your worth. Amani looked down at the sapphire ring, a recycled prop in Damien's performance, not the symbol of love she'd believed it to be. Slowly, she twisted it off her finger and placed it on the table. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she said, rising from her chair. "Before the wedding." "What will you do now?" Eleanor asked. Amani squared her shoulders. "My job. There's a fashion show to launch. After that, I'll figure it out." As she turned to leave, Eleanor called after her. "Ms. Reed, Amani, I'm truly sorry. For what it's worth, I believe my son does have feelings for you. Perhaps not the ones he claimed, but something real nonetheless." "It doesn't matter," Amani replied, surprised to find she meant it. Some things can't be forgiven. Outside, the Milan fog had lifted, the sun breaking through the clouds. Amani walked back toward the hotel, her mind surprisingly clear despite the pain throbbing in her chest. She had been right all along. Protecting herself had been the wisest course. She'd just failed to follow her own advice. At the hotel, the pre-show frenzy was in full swing. The team looked relieved when Amani appeared, immediately pulling her into discussions about last-minute changes and press arrangements. Amani threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction. When someone asked about Damien's arrival, she simply said there had been delays, but the show would proceed as planned. No one noticed her missing ring. By evening, everything was in place. The venue, a converted historic palazzo, was transformed, with sustainable materials that highlighted the new collection's ethos. Models were being prepped backstage. Fashion editors and celebrities were beginning to arrive. Amani stood in the wings, clipboard in hand, reviewing final details with the production team when a familiar voice spoke behind her. "There you are." She turned to find Damien, impeccable, in a tailored suit, smiling at her as if nothing had changed. He moved to kiss her, but Amani stepped back, maintaining a professional distance. "Mr. Rees," she said coolly, "we weren't sure you'd make it." Confusion flickered across his face. "Amani, what's wrong?" His eyes dropped to her left hand, registering the missing ring. "Where is—" "We need to talk," she cut him off. "But not now. The show starts in 30 minutes and there's still the press to manage." "To hell with the press," Damien said, reaching for her arm. "What's going on?" Amani pulled away from his touch. "I met your mother this morning." All color drained from Damien's face. "My mother? She's here. She had some interesting stories to tell about Rebecca, about your father's will." Amani kept her voice steady, refusing to break down. "About your plans for our short-term marriage." "Amani, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," she interrupted. "You're very good at explanations, Damien. But right now, we have a show to run. We can discuss your inheritance plans afterward." She turned back to the production assistant, dismissing him as if he were just another business associate. Damien stood frozen for a moment, then stalked away toward his reserved seat in the front row. The show was a triumph. The sustainable luxury line received immediate acclaim, with orders pouring in from buyers even before the final model left the runway. Amani watched from the side, pride in the work mingling with the ache in her heart. When the lead designer took his bow, he pulled Amani onto the runway with him, acknowledging her contribution to the campaign. The applause was deafening. From her new vantage point, Amani could see Damien in the front row, his face a mask of conflicting emotions as he watched her. The after-party was held in the palazzo's garden, fairy lights twinkling in the trees as fashion's elite mingled and celebrated. Amani moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, making connections, playing her role perfectly. She was speaking with an important editor when Damien appeared at her side. "Excuse us for a moment," he said to the editor, then took Amani's elbow, steering her toward a quiet corner of the garden. "You've avoided me all night," he said once they were alone. "You need to let me explain." "What's to explain?" Amani asked, the calm in her voice surprising even her. "You needed a wife. To access your inheritance. I was convenient, different enough to be interesting, unconnected enough to be controlled. You played a long game, Damien. I'm almost impressed." "That's not what happened," Damien insisted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Yes, My father's will had conditions. Yes, I knew about them, but that's not why I proposed to you. No? Then why the sudden need to keep our engagement quiet? Why the secret meetings with lawyers? Why did you lie about the ring? I panicked, he admitted. When the lawyers contacted me about the inheritance, I realized how it would look to you. I was afraid you wouldn't believe that my feelings for you were real, that you'd see the timing as suspicious. So you lied. Again. Amani shook her head. That doesn't help your case, Damien. The ring, he hesitated. Yes, it was my grandmother's. Yes, I gave it to Rebecca years ago, but I didn't tell you because that relationship has nothing to do with us, except that you discarded her the same way you planned to discard me after securing your inheritance. No. Damien's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby guests. He lowered it with visible effort. Rebecca was different. I was different then, young, under my father's thumb. What I did to her was unforgivable, but I'm not that person anymore, aren't you? Amani met his gaze steadily. Your mother showed me the legal paperwork, Damien. You specified a short-term marriage. For the first time, Damien looked genuinely shocked. What? No, I never… He stopped, realization dawning on his face. Thornfield, my father's lawyer. He must have added that clause without my knowledge. Convenient, Amani said dryly. It's the truth, Damien insisted. My mother has always believed the worst of me. After what happened with Rebecca, she never thought I could change. Can you blame her? No. The single word held a wealth of regret. But Amani, you changed me. When I met you, the inheritance was the furthest thing from my mind. I pursued you because you were the first person who saw past the facade, who challenged me to be better. He reached for her hands, and this time Amani didn't pull away. Call Thornfield yourself. Ask him who requested that short-term clause. It wasn't me. His blue eyes were desperate. I love you, Amani. The real me loves the real you. That's the only truth that matters. For a moment, Amani almost believed him. The anguish in his eyes, the tremor in his voice, it all seemed genuine. But then she remembered how skillfully he'd played the role of a man falling in love, how perfectly he'd said all the right things. I can't do this, she said, pulling her hands free. Even if what you're saying is true, there have been too many lies, Damien. I don't know what to believe anymore. Believe in us, he pleaded. Everything we shared was real, the conversations, the quiet moments, the plans we made. None of that was about an inheritance. Maybe, Amani conceded. Or maybe you're still playing the game, adjusting your strategy now that I've discovered the truth. Damien's face fell. You really think that? After everything we've been through? I don't know what to think anymore. Amani stepped back. I need time, space, away from you and all of this. What are you saying? I'm saying goodbye, Damien. She straightened her shoulders. I'll finish the Milan campaign remotely, then submit. My resignation when I return to New York. Panic flashed across his face. Amani, please. I trusted you, she said, her voice finally breaking. I broke every rule I'd made for myself because I believed you were different. But in the end, you're just like every other man who thinks his wants matter more than a woman's heart. With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. This time, she didn't look back. 1 year later, the small cafe near Central Park was quiet on Tuesday afternoons, one of the reasons Amani loved working there. Her laptop was open, a cup of tea cooling beside it, as she reviewed design concepts for her newest client. After leaving Reese Fashion, she'd taken a risk and started her own creative consulting firm. A year later, Authentic Voice was thriving, with a list of clients who valued Amani's straightforward approach and genuine voice. She was different now, more confident, more willing to take chances professionally, more careful with her heart. The pain of Damien's betrayal had faded to a dull ache that surfaced only occasionally, usually late at night when she allowed herself to wonder what might have been if any of it had been real. The bell above the cafe door jingled, but Amani didn't look up. She was close to finishing the concept for tomorrow's presentation and wanted to maintain her focus. Is this seat taken? The familiar voice sent a jolt through her entire body. Slowly, Amani raised her head to find Damien Reese standing beside her table. looking both the same and utterly different. He was dressed simply, jeans and a sweater rather than his usual tailored suits. His hair was slightly longer, and there was a new maturity in his face, as if the year had aged him more than it should have. "What are you doing here?" Amani asked when she found her voice. "Looking for you," Damien said simply. "May I?" He gestured to the empty chair across from her. After a moment's hesitation, Amani nodded. Damien sat down, his movements careful, as if afraid she might bolt. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I didn't, actually. I come here sometimes, too." A small smile touched his lips. "The owner makes tea the way you like it." Amani studied his face, searching for signs of the manipulative man she'd fled from a year ago. What she saw instead was exhaustion, hope, and something that looked remarkably like humility. "You look well," Damien said. "I've seen the website for Authentic Voice. You're doing amazing work." "Thank you." Amani closed her laptop. "What about you, still running the empire?" A shadow crossed his face. "No, actually. I stepped down as CEO 6 months ago." This was the last thing Amani had expected. "Why?" "Many reasons." Damien's fingers traced patterns on the wooden table. "After you left, I did a lot of thinking about the man I'd become, the choices I'd made, about my father's influence even from the grave." He met her eyes. "I realized I didn't like who I was when power was my priority." "So you just walked away?" Amani couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "Not completely. I'm still on the board, still involved in the sustainable initiatives we started. But the day-to-day leadership, I gave that to people who wanted it for the right reasons." "And what are you doing now?" A genuine smile spread across his face. "Photography, actually. I went back to my first love. I've been documenting grassroots environmental projects around the world." He pulled out his phone, showing her a few images, stunning photographs of community gardens in urban settings, solar installations in remote villages. Despite herself, Amani was impressed. "These are beautiful, Damien." "Thank you." He put the phone away. "But that's not why I wanted to see you. I need to tell you something, and then I'll leave you alone if that's what you want." Amani tensed. "I'm listening." "After you left Milan, I confronted my mother." Damien's voice was steady, his eyes never leaving Amani's. "She admitted that she'd lied to you about the short-term marriage clause. There was never any such thing in the paperwork." Amani felt her breath catch. "Why would she do that?" "To protect you," Damien said simply. "She saw in you what she wished. She'd been strong enough to walk away from a Reese man before he destroyed her. She couldn't bear to see another woman go through what she did. And the inheritance, your father's will? That part was true. Half the family fortune was contingent on my marriage to someone my father would approve of." A bitter smile twisted his lips. "The irony is he never would have approved of you. You're too independent, too principled. He would have seen those qualities as threats rather than strengths." Amani absorbed this information slowly. "So you didn't plan to marry me for the money?" "No." Damien leaned forward. "I wanted to marry you because I loved you. Because you made me want to be better than my father, better than the version of myself I'd been pretending to be for years." "Then why didn't you tell me about the will?" Amani asked. "Why the secrets? The lies?" "Fear," Damien admitted. "I was afraid if you knew about the inheritance condition, you'd never believe my feelings were genuine. That you'd always wonder if I was using you." His laugh was hollow. "Instead, my silence made exactly that happen anyway." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past year hanging between them. "I walked away from the inheritance," Damien said finally. "I told the lawyers to donate it all to educational charities. Every penny." Amani's eyes widened. "You gave up half the Reese fortune?" "Money didn't matter anymore, not after I lost you." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. "I'm not telling you this to win you back, Amani. I know I destroyed your trust. I know some things can't be forgiven. Then why are you here?" "Because you deserve the truth. All of it." His eyes held hers, vulnerable in a way the old Damien never would have allowed. "And because even though I have no right to ask, I want to know if there's any chance, even the smallest possibility, that you might someday be willing to start over. Not where we left off, but from the beginning. As two different people who've both grown from their mistakes. Amani looked at the man across from her. Not Damian Reese, wealthy CEO, but just Damian, a photographer with regrets and hopes like anyone else. The man she'd glimpsed beneath the polished exterior, the one she'd fallen in love with despite her better judgment. "I don't know," she said honestly. "A lot has happened. I've worked hard to rebuild my life without you in it." Disappointment flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. "I understand. It was selfish of me to even ask." He started to rise. "I should go." "Damian," Amani said, surprising herself. Maybe we could start with tea." He froze, hope dawning on his face. "Tea?" "Just tea," she clarified. "No promises, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other again." The smile that spread across his face was the same sunrise smile she remembered, genuine, warm, reaching all the way to his eyes. "I'd like that very much," he said softly. As he went to the counter to order, Amani watched him, a strange sense of calm settling over her. She didn't know if she could ever fully trust him again, if the wounds of the past were too deep to heal. But perhaps this new Damian, the one who'd walked away from power and fortune to find himself, deserved the chance to show her who he'd become, and perhaps she too was different enough now to protect her heart while still leaving it open to possibility. When Damian returned with two steaming cups, their fingers brushed as he handed hers over. The brief contact sent a familiar warmth through her, a reminder of what they'd once shared. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his cup slightly. "To the truth," Amani countered, meeting his gaze steadily. "Whatever it turns out to be." Outside, spring sunshine filtered through the cafe windows, casting patterns of light across their table. A new season, a fresh start. Nothing guaranteed, nothing promised, but for the first time in a year, Amani allowed herself to look back, not at what she'd lost, but at what might still be found. The end.